I'm really dumb. When I first saw the title of this movie, I thought it was just some clever wordplay, like never rarely, or like sometimes and sometimes always. Like, oh, that's makes me think. That's thought provoking. And then I realized halfway through the movie, um, it's just the multiple choice answers. Never, rarely, sometimes, always. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today our movie in the middle is Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which is about a 17-year-old high school girl who has an unplanned pregnancy and goes across state lines to New York with her cousin to get an abortion without her parents knowing. This movie is directed by Eliza Hittman and stars Sidney, Flanigan, and Talia Ryder, who all three of which I believe are relatively unknown. I haven't heard of them, and I looked them up, and they have done a few things here and there. Talia Ryder's going to be in the upcoming remake of West Side Story, but other than that, I haven't heard of them. This movie has me thinking. One thing I picture, like visually in my mind, when I'm watching a movie is the shape of a movie. In terms of like the plot, the screenwriting, whatever it might be. Normally, other movies are usually more of like a sine wave kind of shape, with like the ups and downs of the plot and what the characters go through, and things seem to be good, but then bad comes again, then they prevail, and then it kind of keeps going. Kind of like my shirt, actually. This movie is more of like the stripe on a football. It's very flat, but it has very big points that happen throughout it. Not to say that it's boring. It's not boring. To some people, it might be. If you don't like indie movies or very slice of life movies like Lady Bird or King of Staten Island, you might not like this. Actually, might like this a lot less. If for nothing else, if you watch this movie, if you're an ASMR fan, there's a lot of doctor appointments. There's a lot of typing and bag checks and very small things with sounds. So there's that. But I don't know. I normally don't care for slice of life movies, but this one intrigued me a lot. I don't know what it was, but I was never bored or looking at the time thinking, wow, this has gone really, really slowly. It is a very subdued movie. It's not here to entertain. It's here to show you something, and whether or not you leave and come back, or you just leave, or you watch the whole thing, it's just presenting you this story. Honestly, maybe not even so much of a story as if just a moment that this director wants to show us about how it really is. There is no flash in this movie. It is not here to be like, look what I can do with a camera. It's here to be like, this is legitimately how this trip would go. This is how these doctor appointments would go. That's it. It's just not something everybody sees. It's almost like they could have made this like a documentary, but they decided to make it a narrative so as to be even closer to some of the characters and some of the scenes. And wow, does it tackle a lot. It feels very mundane, but it's not. It's just very subtle, and my God, is it impactful. There are lots of scenes throughout this movie that are very hard to watch, but there are specifically two scenes that are just heartbreaking, at least for me. One is a lot more obvious, as the scene, or actually, honestly, as the shot progresses. But the other one is a little more towards the end, and it's again just a shot or two, but the moment itself is just so telling. It's so telling, and I mean basically because this movie deals with two very, very heavy, important topics when it comes to women. One is abortion, and the other is how they are treated in public, how they're looked at, how they're objectified, how they're used, and how it's so casual. Watching it myself, I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. I cannot imagine being a woman watching this and being like, yeah, that's terrible. And I know it because I deal with it every day. Like it's just terrible. Like the women have just gotten, I don't say they've gotten used to it, but it's just something that's a part of their lives now. Like, it made me reflect, as a guy, of just like, has there ever been a point in my life where I've acted like any of the douchebags in this movie? Because if so, I need to go pray or something. But these actresses do such a great job. The thing about the characters is it's like the movie where you don't really get a whole lot from them, but just over the course of the movie, specifically the second half, you see a lot more of what they have to go through and what they do and how they react. This movie doesn't have a whole lot of like, not even over the top, but even just regular reacting or whatever. It's hard to explain, but they're very subdued, but that's because it's very hyper realistic. Their conversations, people just sitting and not talking for a while. It's Hitchcock said that editing is life, but without the boring bits. This one has the boring bits, but it works for what it's supposed to be. They did a really good job of letting us know these characters a little bit. Not as much as I would have liked, but a little bit, without really having any sort of, here, this is my character, this is my exposition. Like, they did a really good job with that. And both of them play those two heartbreaking scenes amazingly, but I have to give it to Sidney Flanigan. She's like one of the most robotic characters on the outside, but you come to see why. And like, the one specific scene, actually the titular probably scene, like some of the best acting I've ever seen, just because of how gradual it is. And I don't want to say a payoff because that sounds terrible, but the end result, I guess, of all of this, like, what is her character, and then you see this scene and you're like, okay, yeah, like, I get it a lot more. That's the point of the movie, is it's about this moment. With that being said, I would have liked to have gotten just a little bit more of her character, like to know a little bit more about her. The scene that I keep referring to shows that the point is, we don't need the background context on her. We don't need to know that. And I'm really glad they didn't show it, because that would have taken away from the point of the movie being right now. We know she's gone through stuff, but right now it's about her. It's not about her family. It's not about anybody else's decisions but hers. I just would have liked a little bit more of just her in other moments too. We get how she's feeling in extremely subtle things, but I would have liked a little bit more, just a little bit. But I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt in saying that it's being super realistic. It's just showing you straightforward, this is how it is, and I could connect with her a little bit. This is like one of those exceptions. One other last little thing, and this is a really small thing, kind of, but the movie just feels like it kind of ends short. A lot of slice of life movies feel that way. This one, it definitely has closure and everything, but there is one sort of, not a subplot, but something that we see more of in the beginning with her family, and something that comes up a little bit later that I wish we had gotten just to see some more of that at the end. I wanted to know a little bit more of, or honestly had a theory on what one of the family members, how they played a role maybe in everything she's gone through, and I would like to have known that. Again, it's not super important to the story that she's trying to tell, so that's really it's something that I have to recognize. But I would have liked to have seen something with that, because they introduce it really heavily in the beginning. So this is a very, very slice of life movie. I mean, like right out of the pie of life. It does not mess around with trying to entertain people. It just shows you these one or two kind of big things going on that women deal with. And for anybody who is gonna like say those comments, I'll just say this now. Obviously, it happens on both sides. Yes, like I recognize that, like, men also, it's very, very important that, we show that men get abused and used too. That's important. But right now, that seems to be, it seems to be that women are getting targeted so much more, and always have been. This is a really important story to tell, because it shows extremely realistically, without it being a documentary, what it's like. And once again, it deals with this huge topic of abortion. And no matter how you feel about it, no matter what your stance is on it, what I liked is that they didn't necessarily harp on the stance on it, and except for one little transition segment, didn't even bring in religion or anything into it. My perspective on everything aside, what I liked specifically is that they focused more on the humanity aspect of it, that this is still a person going through an extremely tough time in their life, through something that half of us don't go through, especially at that age, and you still have to treat them like a person who has emotions. Like, you have to give them support and care. And I love the counselor in the movie, and I love the people who just, they support her, and just first and foremost, are you safe? I'm gonna give Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always a 3.5 out of 4. Alrighty, well, let me know what you guys think of the movie in the comments below. Make sure to hit the like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. And I'll be back with some more 2020 catch-up movie reviews and 2021 movie reviews now that we're finally getting some actual movies coming out again. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.